All right, good morning. If everyone can find their seat, we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome to session 1A of today's presentation, Listen and Listen Again, Community First Archiving and Events. My name is Patrick Cash. I am the current membership chair for SNCA, and I will be serving as the moderator for this session. A little bit of housekeeping before I introduce our presenters. I will introduce them, and then at the end, we will have Q&A for everyone. I will have the microphone walking around, so if you have a question, please hold it to the end, raise your hand, and I'll bring the microphone to you. We also have some viewers joining us via Zoom, so if they have questions as well, we'll bring those up. But let me introduce our panelists really fast, if you wouldn't mind raising your hand as I say your name. First up, we have Kathy Atwater. Ms. Atwater is a fourth-generation resident of the Northside community and presently works as the Community Advocacy Specialist at the Jackson Center. Next up, we have Ms. Patricia Pat Jackson, who grew up in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and has been a member of the St. Joseph's CME Church for over 40 years. She is also a church secretary, a stewardess, and a community activist. Shatira Powell has been a resident of Northside for 8 years, and she is the curator of Southern Historical Collection. Anna Spencer and Catherine Wall are co-directors of public history at the Marion Cheek Jackson Center. And that is all the email they sent me says. So at this time, I'll hand it over to Ms. Anna Spencer, who will start, and then we'll go from there.
Hi, and I thought I would just give a brief introduction to the Jackson Center so you can kind of know what we're all about. The Marion Cheek Jackson Center for Saving and Making History is a nonprofit dedicated to honoring, renewing, and building community in the historically Black neighborhoods of Northside, Pine Knolls, and Tin Top in Chapel Hill and Carborough. We do this through our 4 main program areas of public history, housing justice, education, and student engagement. All of the work is guided by community-led teams and rooted in community history, much of which is hosted on From the Rock Wall, our community history website we'll be talking about today. Now, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Pat Jackson to tell you more about how community members shared the need for a digital space to collect their history and how they pushed that forward.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Growing up in the North Side community of Chapel Hill was a love-hate, magical time for me. This place that I call my town was filled with so many mixed signals. Go here, don't go there, keep to the left, watch out for the right. Born and raised in Chapel Hill, the left was my stomping grounds. Sykes Street to Robinson Street to Rosemary. The right, the forbidden territory, Franklin Street, and the big UNC campus. The left housed the center where all of my summer and winter life was spent, swimming in the pool, seeing movies on a big reel-to-reel from Mr. Frank Joe at night, getting visits from the UNC students on their dental program in November, warm coats and toys donations from the Christmas house in December. The right was the dairy bar on Franklin Street, where after church, everybody wanted to go get ice cream, but there were restrictions. The campus, where you heard from your big brothers and sisters, I made $50 at working at the snack bar, and boy, oh boy, all the parties on the weekends. I learned from my proud, powerful ancestors to be kind, courteous, but do you think I was going to let anybody push me around? Oh no. Remember, they said to me always, God is watching and he'll take care of you. our Chapel Hill community was filled with church, land, homeowners, entrepreneurial spirits, and a keen sense of what was needed to stay safe in Chapel Hill. From the beginning came the passing on of treasured ways of life that they wanted to share and always wanted us to remember. Tell it to the young ones, they said. Come to the family reunion. Your family's gonna be there. Your cousins from up the road, and that was up in the Baltimore area, they're gonna be there. You gotta see them. Your aunt died this past week. Come to the funeral. Your people wanna see you. In 2009, located in the heart of the North Side area, the Marion Cheek Jackson Center, from whom my mother-in-law passed, and it's named for her, for saving and making history, one of it only of its kind in North Carolina, was founded to honor, renew, and continue to build on community. Oral history is at the start and the heart of all that the center does with its housing, education, and cultural initiatives, led by community teams whose members aim to do justice by the legacies of vision, value, and example, to hold the stories close to our heart. For on the right is the university researchers. As one resident put it, you've already given them the shirts off of our backs. Why should we give them our histories too? Thus, from the rock wall is a place for our voice. Loud and proud do we take that honor and move it on in Chapel Hill, North Carolina.
It is my honor to follow Ms. Pat in this presentation. And I'd like to just say my name's pronounced Shatra. And I am an archivist and a community member in Chapel Hill. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about this because I think it affects the way I enter the conversation. So I've been an archivist since 2010, and my background is in African American history and community archives. This grounds my work in the collections. I've worked in community archives in Chicago and in Los Angeles, and was a part of a large community-driven archives program at UNC Chapel Hill. And all of this informs my current position as a curator of the Southern Historical Collection. And these experiences help me understand that every archive has a point of view. We are not neutral. And there's always an opportunity to tell your story in your authentic voice, and it will always be empowering. And one of the most empowering things communities can do for themselves. So that's my role as an archivist. As a Northside community member, life happened pretty fast for me between 2014 and 2016. I purchased my first house in Chapel Hill in 2016. My baby girl was born in 2016 on May 12th, and we closed on May 30th. It was a wild time. So not only does home ownership, friendship, and quality of life for my kids tie me to this neighborhood, I also wanted to share a special story that connects me to Miss Pat. So in 2007, long before I was even thinking about moving to North Carolina, Miss Pat's daughter, Carrie, married my first cousin, Damien, in the Hargraves Community Center, which is right around the corner from my house. Unfortunately, my parents died in 2010 and 2012, and so they never got to meet their grandkids. But the idea that my parents drove down the street, shared drinks and smiles with Northside neighborhoods on the same streets where their grandkids are learning to ride their bikes, and where we live today. I don't think there's anywhere else in North Carolina that I could live and feel as happy as I do in the Northside community. So I mention all these things because at a conference for archivists, I don't want the message to be infiltrate as a winning strategy. The notes that I want to share are designed to highlight the innovative ways that the Jackson Center and community members have helped people see value in documenting their lived experience and finding ways to activate the archive. So in 2018, the leadership of the Jackson Center asked me to co-chair the Community Review Board with Kathy Atwater. And they let us know that this would be a group that would help transform the Oral History Trust into something more substantive, like a digital commons. Della emphasized that we needed community voices to ensure that our process and the final product were something that communities could feel ownership of. I appreciated the approach and was excited to spend more time with Kathy and meet my neighbors. Kathy is amazing, and she knows everybody. And I'm so thankful to call her a friend. And she really did all of the work of surfacing people that we could talk to and helping them join the review board. So somehow we managed to cobble together a group of 4 to 5 people to meet once a month as a part of the community review board. I really credit Della for helping us keep it low stakes, where it was just come and talk to us about your memories, talk to us about who you think we should be interviewing. It didn't just jump right in to help us build a website. And just giving them a chance to talk about growing up in the community. So by the 3rd meeting, we were introduced to the web developers who used a lot of design thinking strategies to help us articulate what was special about Northside. We knew we wanted a site that would inspire people to keep adding oral histories and digitized documents. We wanted the world to know that we have an identity that is connected but distinct from the university, and we value self-determination and independence. So we spent time listening to existing interviews and imagining how they could be tagged based on the way stories were told. What are the street names? What intergenerational interviews are happening? What elements of Black history are being surfaced through these stories? Even the name Rockwall came from a shared memory of gathering at a low rock wall in the neighborhood to plan for protest or socialize with friends. It's also an architectural feature used on campus and in community with deep roots to Chapel Hill's legacy of African American builders. We thought about the use potential of the oral history, including things like K-12 instruction, documentaries, speaking engagements for community leaders, walking tours of the neighborhoods, social networks and timelines. Throughout every step of the process, we were consulted. They asked us what we thought about the colors, the content on the homepage, the layout of the Add Your Story page, even the challenges with an in memoriam page, which I'm not sure that stayed, we'll find out. But it's hard to keep up and you don't want to miss anyone, so it can be challenging. CRB members and our families were photographed and featured for the website. We also drew upon our networks to have people conduct user surveys and weigh in on the form and function of the site. So we've come a long way from the inception from the Rockwall, and you'll hear more about that in a moment. But it's definitely an example of the quality of what you put into it was the quality of what came out of it. And I just wanted to share a couple takeaways before I pass it back to Anna. And so through my work on this project and in the Community Review Board, I understand that the perception of community is different when you ask community themselves. I think in general, people tell better stories to their friends than they do to strangers. Community archives, especially those with oral history as their foundation, have an authenticity and complexity to the lived experience that we rarely find in an institutional archive. Through sitting in on the interviews and talking with neighbors, I've learned that people don't always do the right thing, they don't agree with each other, and they don't always get along, and that's okay. Through this work, we see that Black people can exist in our full humanity in this archive, not just the respectable versions of ourselves. The second takeaway is related to language, one way in which language is critical and in another way where language is insufficient. So with From the Rockwall, the way that language was critical was in the literal names of the neighborhoods. People from Pine Knolls did not want to be subsumed under the name Northside. So it was important that we say Tin Top, Pine Knolls, and Northside in our consent agreements. For them, it was an erasure, and it belied generations of tension within the community, even though they have a relatively close physical proximity. The second were questions about the literal voice of the site, or was the text of the website Black enough, which never answer that question. That's a trap. Don't answer that question. But contextually, there's substance, given the history of extraction for this community. Were there ways, perhaps with sounds and imagery, that we could signal that this is a product of the community and not something that came from the outside? So this is one of the reasons where we have audio clips and images of community members welcoming visitors to every page so people could see who was behind it. So I will leave it there and let Anna take the next part.
Shader, we don't have an in memoriam page because I think all of the complexities that you mentioned of keeping that up to date and making sure nobody was left off.
Yeah.
But we do have the Northside newsletters on there, which do include an in memoriam page, which is a community newsletter the Jackson Center does that comes out every month. And so, thank you for talking about the CRB's involvement in the production of the site. I'll be talking a bit more about how the website functions, like and unlike an archive. Let's see if I can get this to move. Here we go. Yeah. So when creating From the Rock Wall, we wanted all of the power and standards of a traditional archive, but with the warmth and welcoming nature that you really only get when you're in community. So as Ms. Pat noted, there's been a history of extraction by academic researchers when coming into the neighborhoods, and we wanted to make sure that From the Rock Wall didn't replicate that, and that it had a very different feel and user experience than a traditional or academic archive. While the back end of the website looks and functions a lot like a traditional archive, and it's powered off of Omeka, the front end of the website is meant to be part of a much larger conversation with and among everyone who's lived, played, worked, worshiped, served, or has a stake in preserving the future of the historically Black neighborhoods in Chapel Hill and Carborough. Following our namesake, Miss Marion Cheek Jackson's motto, "Without the past, you have no future," From the Rock Wall is all about finding guideposts in the histories shared on the site for achieving community justice now for the future. And so thinking about the user experience was at the core of the design. Since our primary audience was going to be community members of all ages from many different backgrounds, a majority of the users weren't going to be familiar with using archives. We wanted to make sure that community members felt comfortable using the website and that they felt reflected in the design and as owners of the history. One way we did this was by highlighting people, places, and topics as entry points to the collection, because anybody who spent time in the neighborhoods or with neighbors would be able to find something that they related to or knew within those categories. Every person who has an oral history on the website has a person page that at minimum compiles all of the content that they've contributed in one place. We're working on making sure that every person also has a photo and a short bibliography. It's been great to see people tell their friends to find them on the rock wall, as we hear Miss Pat say to everyone she comes across, or see visitors search for a friend or family member and learn something new about their history that they've never known, even though they've been friends their entire life. The Places page is formatted very similarly to the Person page, but instead brings together places that have been relevant to local Black history. These include sites of celebration, sites of protest, churches, Black-owned businesses, and more. Users are able to find locations like Colonial Drugstore, where the Chapel Hill Nine, a group of high school students, staged the first sit-in in Chapel Hill during the Civil Rights Movement. We're working on making it so that every Places page has a quote from an oral history that's relevant to the space, a photo, and a brief description. At the bottom of each page are all of the materials on the website that relate or discuss that space. One thing we were able to add after the launch are the buttons that you see that can tell you whether that place is still open or operating, if it's a contested space like a business where sit-ins occurred, or if it's a Black-owned business. And one thing that we thought would be great with that were if students were looking at the page, looking at spots in their community, they would easily be able to look at someplace and go, oh, I can go there for lunch, it's still open. The Topics page brings together previous exhibits, interview series, and major themes in the community history. This offers newcomers a way to get oriented into the community histories, as well as one way that a lot of things are grouped together. And to make sure that the website met community members' visions, we user tested with a large variety of users, spanning academic researchers to people who didn't have a lot of experience with technology. Knowing that there are many elders in the community who have shared their stories to put on From the Rock Wall, and knowing that understanding new technologies and new formats can be challenging, we wanted to make sure that the technology wasn't a barrier to using the site. The testing helped us create an in-depth instruction page that goes over things like how to play and download audio, instructions on how to navigate the website, and helpful terms to know like definitions for oral history and consent. Even if it's someone's first time exploring a digital archive, we wanted them to feel empowered to be able to go explore on their own, like they had the knowledge to do it. It also gave the Community Review Board the idea to create audio buttons on each major page where a community member or longtime Jackson Center staff person speaks to you about what you're going to find in that section and how to use the page. The audio welcome to the website is one of the biggest ways that new users are welcomed into the warmth that you normally only experience in person. It was a last-minute addition that only came about thanks to the ingenuity and vision of the Community Review Board. You can see Mr. David Caldwell in the button on the right getting ready to introduce you to the website. So if you have a chance, I recommend listening to him. It's a great 30-second clip to orient you to the website and the history of the community. When it comes to curating and accessioning items into the archive, we follow the directions of the CRB and community members. If community members find a story important enough to share with us or bring in documents to scan, we'll add them to the website. The Jackson Center only acts as hosts for the site. We don't claim ownership over the materials that it holds. We don't make decisions on what's appropriate to include on the website. Instead, we look to the Community Review Board for guidelines on what they think the website needs and directions for collecting efforts. When accessioning new items, we generally follow common metadata standards, but there are some things we do differently because we're thinking about access points that would be useful for community members who are our primary audience. Rather than using a major standard like the Library of Congress subject headings, we've created our own tags that are specific to community experience and knowledge. Since our collection is very geographically specific and focused on a specific community, a subject heading like African American history applies to everything held on the website. Using a tag like Hargrave Center, where neighbors young and old remember going for recreation, or Bill's Barbecue, where people remember getting a chuck wagon sandwich, provides entry points that community members know and want to explore and reminisce about. There's also times when tag words are specifically chosen because it communicates an experience of the community, like tagging things with desegregation instead of integration. Through everything, we wanted to make sure that it's a living and evolving site. So there's a big emphasis on community contributions, and that control of the content and direction of the website rests in the hands of community members. The Jackson Center hosts the website, but we don't own the history that it contains. That rests solely in the people that contributed their stories. On every page of the website, there's a respond button that directs people to contribute their own histories, provide comments to existing oral histories if they hear something they disagree with or remember differently. As you all know, history's not just one linear story, everyone's got their own take. And they can also let us know who else they want us to talk to on the website, whose history they think is valuable. And we make sure to promote that aspect of community contribution at every event we do, which leads us nicely to Catherine Wall's section on using the website for community events.
Good morning. I came to the Jackson Center as a historian as opposed to an archivist, so I appreciated the conversation about the challenges of what is an archivist. One friend asked me if it was like a wizard librarian, and I was like, yeah, kind of. But as a historian, the people know what I do. They just feel really moved to tell me how much they hate it. I often hear, oh, history is my least favorite subject. So I was completely inspired when I was given the opportunity to work with the Community Review Board at the Jackson Center to find ways of getting the amazing history that has been recorded in these oral history interviews on its feet out of the archive and into the community, because I think that's where people see the real power of history and understand what it means. By bringing all of our content from the Rockwall into community events, we get it back to the people who provided it in the first place, and we pass it on to the people that they're most invested in having that history go to. We started out by just bringing our content into organizational events that we do every year, like our holiday celebration. Let's see if I can, where do I need to point it? There we go. Every year we have an annual holiday celebration that brings the community together. One of the things you'll see on the slide is we made QR codes that link to clips of community members talking about, their memories of holiday traditions. One of those holiday traditions was the local churches providing a brown paper bag every Christmas Eve that had an orange and an apple and some nuts and a peppermint stick. And we, the Community Review Board, decided, wouldn't it be lovely if we gave those out and provided in each bag the clip and the link where they could go listen to Miss Arminta Fouché tell her story about remembering those Christmas bags. So those are some of the ways that at our annual holiday party we've tried to do that. We also connect with local government organizations, the town of Chapel Hill and Parks and Recreation, to participate in Juneteenth. Every year. This year at Juneteenth, we're going to be hosting a transcribathon where people who come to the celebration can go to a quiet room, put on some headphones, and transcribe a 30 to 60-second clip of history from their own community and can be a part of making and saving Black history while they're there celebrating Black history at this event. So we've done this with students at UNC many times and have had great success with this sort of crowdsourced version of creating transcriptions for our archive. We're excited to have it happening in community at Juneteenth this year. And very grateful that Hargrave Center is providing us with laptops and headphones and all the technology that we need to make that work. We also have a festival every year, the Northside Festival, that's coming up, and we'll be doing a community history scavenger hunt with kids at that festival, where they will be going around and asking people to sign off. And can I find somebody who went to Lincoln High School? And so we're getting that history with the kids interacting and creating that intergenerational experience. One of the things I've been most excited that we've been able to do with the CRB's leadership is to create some just public history events for the Jackson Center that have become annual events that people already ask us, when is the pool party? When is the next cinema night? So those have enabled us to work with some other nonprofits in the community, to work with Parks and Rec, to create these free public history focused events and expand the reach of From the Rockwall beyond just the big public festivals into these particular events. So these are all opportunities for neighbors to celebrate their own history. At every event, we try to emphasize intergenerational connection, the idea of the legacy of this community and the need to pass that on to the next generation. We also very often have an opportunity at all of these events to give community members a chance to share their history directly in real time. When we can, we record those conversations, and with permission, of course, they do wind up on From the Rockwall. So if you go to our clips area and you look for clips from our pool party, you will see a lot of the clips about the A.D. Clark pool were recorded at a pool party event. So we try to have space where people can, in real time, contribute to the archive. The first of these community events that we did was our cinema event. We brought that back in 2021, where we had to have people seated 2 rows away from each other and masks and all of that that summer. But this year will be our 4th annual cinema event. We do that in partnership with the Chelsea Theater, and they graciously allow us to use their space. We've had a number of different films that we've been able to bring in. The first film was black and white footage from the late 1930s that was recorded by a photographer, H. Lee Waters, is that his full name? Mr. Waters traveled around North Carolina shooting black and white footage of small communities around the state, and then working with movie theaters to get people to come in, and his motto was like, see yourself on the big screen. So he would get a contract from the theater to go around and shoot people's likeness, and then they would want to come buy a ticket and go see their movie. We had a local musician play piano to accompany the black and white films. Since then, we've done movies about civil rights activists from Chapel Hill. We showed Stay Prayed Up, which is a phenomenal film about gospel music, which was accompanied by a community gospel choir made up of members of several different churches. This year, we'll be showing local filmmakers' work called A Journey Towards Integration about the desegregation of the Chapel Hill Carborough City Schools. So these are some images from that. You can see our gospel choir down there. And then the pool party this will be our third annual pool party. It's recognizing the A.D. Clark Pool at Hargrave Center. The pool was the first pool that allowed African-American families to use it in Chapel Hill, and that was in 1961. So we don't just have swimming and food, but people take the mic and share their memories, and you can see the gentleman with his phone go into that QR code. So at all of these events, we try to have QR codes where people can enjoy that experience. And it's another one of those ways that the intergenerational connection happens. It's so heartwarming to see grandkids, with their grandparents, showing them how to get to the QR code reader on their phone and how to listen to these things. All of these events are only successful because of the community members who envision them, who attend them, who share their own memories, and who host and lead them. And we're very fortunate to have had Mrs. Kathy Atwater lead many of these events for us, and I'd like you to hear about these experiences from her.
Hello, everyone. As said, I'm Kathy Atwater, and I'm just excited to be here because I see some of my old friends from Wilson Library. Whoop, whoop. I worked at Wilson Library before coming to the Jackson Center. As been said, I'm a fourth-generation resident of the Chapel Hill community, and just so excited to be a part of the CRB and what the Jackson Center is doing in preserving our history, because we do have a rich, rich history. So what I'm going to talk to you about is community members as hosts for these events that we put on. So celebrations are the exciting parts of what community members do with the public history team. And one of the guidelines that the Jackson Center embodies is to let the community lead, and the Jackson Center supports. No one can tell their history like the ones who lived it, and this gives credibility to the work that we do. At the cinema events, as Catherine has said, we have residents facilitate, which gives the attendees the encouragement to share their stories. Our first cinema event that I attended was, as Catherine mentioned, the Waters Films, and what excitement filled the room as residents found their family members on film. You heard the oohs and the ahs, and that's my granddaddy. Those are my aunties. That's my cousin. That's the twins we grew up with. And it went on and on and on. And at the pool party, as has been mentioned, the Jackson Center started the discussion, and the neighbors took over, stating how they were lifeguards back in the day, how they worked in the snack bar, how they learned how to swim. I'd be one of those that learned how to swim. And how before the pool, how they had to swim in the neighboring creeks and the ponds, because that's been said, the pools wasn't open to the African-American communities. And this subjected them, swimming in the creeks and the ponds, to all kinds of diseases and illnesses. Again, they said how at the pool, you saw all the friends you went to school with, and how you felt safe and protected because the elders were also there looking out for you. How you looked forward to the snacks, the push-ups. I don't know if y'all ever had that, but the ice cream push-ups, we had that. We had baseball cookies. We had Fritos and other kind of chips. We had popsicles. We had sandwiches. We had sodas. We had fond memories. Grateful to be able to recapture those memories and share them with the new folks in town. We even had a remake of the snack bar with some of the good stuff people remember. One resident took the liberty of bringing his ice cream maker, and we had homemade ice cream. Yummy. It was good. It was good. None of this would have happened if the public history team had not done the interviews or encourage community members to do their own interviews at family gatherings, at family reunions, or one-on-one interviews with elderly family members. This would not have happened if neighbors were not willing to participate in the interviews, and if members of the CRB were not willing to explore the what-ifs. What if it were possible to see how the Orange County Training School was back in the day, when the majority of the CRB members, we weren't even born then. Those came through the cinema events, starting with the water films. What if it were possible to recount the ways that the A.D. Clark Pool brought the Black communities of Chapel Hill, Carrboro, and rural Orange County together? Let's have a pool party. What if it were possible to relive the wrapping of the maypole that the Orange County Training School did every May 1st, bringing school and community together? Okay, let's incorporate that into the annual Northside Festival that the Jackson Center hosts every year, the last Saturday in April, which you all are invited to attend. It's a fun party, really it is. What if we have community members tell the history of the Maypole Festival that they participated in? Yes, let's have longtime community member Miss Espa Foster share that this year and teach the young and the young in heart how it was done. What if From the Walk Wall did not exist and we were not able to upload the videos that community member Judith Van Wyck filmed of some of the key people that were involved in the desegregation of the Chapel Hill Carrboro schools? Teachers like R.D. Smith, Francis Hargraves, Principal James Peace, Hilliard Caldwell, the Reverend Dr. J.R. Manley, who was the first Black member of the school board. All of which, except Mr. Hilliard Caldwell, who is now in his 90s, all the others have now passed away. What a loss that would have been. And this video, as Catherine has said, will be presented at our next cinema event in June, which will be the 4th year for our cinema event. This will be the 3rd year for our pool party, and community members will be participating in the June 10th celebration, has been said, also for the 3rd year. We continue to promote From the Walk Wall at our annual Northside Festival and our Jackson Center Holiday Party. In one of the oral history interviews, as has been said, a resident talked about the joy she felt as a child in receiving the brown paper bag filled with fruit, candy, nuts. And this was after she had participated in their church's Christmas program. What if we bring this tradition back to be a part of the Jackson Center Holiday Party and give everyone in attendance a bag? We've done this for the past 2 years, and it was more than what was in the bag that caused everyone's face to light up. It was the joy of receiving still held true for all who took home a bag. Community members have an opportunity to not only listen to From the Walk Wall, but to share their own story. From the Walk Wall is a living organism that will continue to grow as long as we continue to listen and let the community share. The only reason we continue to have these events is because of the outpouring of positive responses from everyone who have either participated or heard about it, and encourages us to continue the work. Community members look forward to what has become yearly celebrations of community events. Again, all led by community members, because no one can tell your history like you can.
All right, thank you very much. That was outstanding. So if you have any questions for our panelists, please raise your hand, and I'll bring the microphone around. And if we have any questions via Zoom, we'll be happy to take those as well. Sure, go ahead.
You mentioned on oral history, do you ever take anything physical to maintain if someone has something in the attic that
I said, there have been times that people have just outright donated things, like the videotapes that Miss Kathy mentioned of like Principal James Peace, Hilliard Caldwell. The filmmaker actually just had those sitting in the back of her closet and was going to get rid of them until someone said the Jackson Center might want those. But a lot of times people are bringing in really important family documents to themselves. So we're not going to take those to keep, you know, digitizing them, since we don't have a physical archive that people come to look at. We'll just digitize them, and that's the form of preservation that we do, and we'll give them access to that digital copy as well. And you know, if they just want us to digitize it for them, but they don't want to put it on their website, that's something that we also offer. Because for us, you know, it's however the community members want their objects to be preserved. So if I noticed something was like vinegaring, I may make the recommendation of, you may want to take this out of the sleeve or something, but I'm not going to say, we should keep this at the Jackson Center because we can do a better job of preserving it than you can.
Yeah, and I would also say that's where collaboration can come in, because a place like Wilson Library might be a place where people put their physical documents if that's a need of theirs. But once again, it's all in deference to what communities are asking for.
All right, great question. Anyone else?
Hi, my name is Rachel. Nice to meet you all. So I'm wondering, what were some of your largest struggles in the beginning of the creation of your foundation? So getting community support, what kind of struggles or barriers did you run into?
Getting it started from the rock wall, the Jackson Center.
Go ahead.
Get started, okay. I think people's capacity is a big challenge, that they are interested in the work, but they might not be available for every meeting or willing to commit to the full process. But I feel like we've been very flexible with people in understanding that they're doing what they can, and people rotate. There's times I've had to step away and come back. So I think that engagement and the buy-in and the long-term commitment to the work of the rock wall has kind of ebbed and flowed over time. That's a challenge I would point to.
And I would like to say, it's totally new. This is not something that we've heard of before, and as Ms. Pat had said, you know, back in the day, people were taking our history and prospering from it. So why would I want to come and have my history put on this website and I not gain anything from it? So that building of trust was the main thing that we had to develop with our community, to know that, okay, this is not one of those researchers that's coming, doing their PhD, prospering off of your history, and you not get any benefit from it. So building that trust was key in getting it launched.
And I would add to what Ms. Kathy said. I feel like a lot of the funding, as you all know, that that one gets for archives and for building something like a community archive, often it's on grants, and those are short-term. And before Anna and I were hired as the permanent co-directors of public history, the people managing the oral history program were sort of a rotating cast of grant-funded contractors. And I think that a lot of the ability to build trust has, you know, a lot of these events that have happened since we had a permanent staff that was able to do this work with some consistency and some continuity. I feel like I do better work as a public historian, and also I have much deeper relationships and connections and lifelong friendships with people because I'm able to be there every day and in the community, and I'm not going anywhere.
And we were lucky that the NEH and Mellon funded this project, but of course, you know, if we were to do like a major revamp of the website or something, since it is just Catherine and I on staff for public history, and then we sometimes have like a college intern that helps us out, it would require like another cycle of grant funding to do really major changes. So as anybody like in the nonprofit realm knows, funding is often the big piece where you've got the ideas, but then you need the money to make it happen.
And I just want to add, Catherine and Anna, we have given them the name at the Jackson Center, the ones with the woo. They make it happen.
All right, thank you. Any additional questions? I'll ask one really quickly. Do you have a vision for what the future of this project looks like down the road?
Would you like to talk about the Gateways project?
Yeah, one exciting piece that is forthcoming. We already have in front of St. Joseph CME Church, they proudly house the Freedom Fighters Gateway, which is a stone wall that features granite photographs and oral history quotes from Chapel Hill's civil rights leaders. We are in the process of using the oral histories that are from the rock wall, doing new series of oral histories. We do what we call our oral history potlucks, where people bring history to the table in the form of their own photos, documents, whatever they may have, and we sit down and record their oral history while we scan the materials that they've brought. We've been doing those around other themes to support the creation of additional gateways. So we are in the process right now of getting down to a final design for a gateway honoring Chapel Hill's Black builders and masons. And then in the future, we have plans for gateways honoring Black teachers and honoring Black faith leadership in the community. And those will be placed around Chapel Hill in areas that are historically Black neighborhoods as a way of not just sharing that history with people. They'll all have signage that will point people to from the rock wall and to landing pages that will be the digital version of that physical gateway. But it also is a reminder for all of Chapel Hill that Chapel Hill's Black history is a long and proud history, and it's one that continues and is moving forward in exciting ways. So that's one thing that we see as a future project that we're right in the middle of right now.
And we're really excited about when the first gateway was inaugurated. From the rock wall didn't exist, so we're really excited about the potentials to create these new digital gateways that give you the opportunity to provide a lot more information as well as like a lot more context for what's happening, because if you carve it in stone, you're never gonna change it. So this gives us the opportunity to have people say, my grandfather was a Mason and I want to tell his story. And if it's after the gateway's already constructed, we have a spot where people can go and put that.
That's great. And I'd say we're also just excited about the continued growth. I mean, when the Jackson Center was founded in 2009, there were some interviews that were already at the university's archive that we were able to roll into the Oral History Trust. Some new interviews were done, so that 10 years in, by 2019, we had 125 interviews. And what's our number today?
Over 350.
So, and we had no clips available at all for teachers to use. And now we have 500 now, right? And we've been working with educators. Another really exciting future for From the Rock Wall is we've been working with the Equity Office in the Chapel Hill Scarborough City Schools. We did a workshop for elementary school teachers last year. This year we're working with middle and high school teachers. And once we're done working with all of those teachers, they're revamping the scope and sequence of the way that the Chapel Hill Scarborough City Schools are using the state mandated curriculum. And as a result, every single one of the 12,000 students in the Chapel Hill Scarborough City School System will be exposed to at least one lesson plan in every year of their K-12 education, where they will learn about Black history from the people in their community who lived it, using From the Rock Wall. So that's another really exciting thing.
All right, any final questions?
Thank you. This is really wonderful. I was wondering, have you heard or talked to other communities or other cities in North Carolina or other places, other Black communities that are trying to model what you've done in other places? I know you're spreading the word through this, but have you spoken with others? Is this a model for future community centers?
It's definitely part of our strategic plan for the center going forward. So it's something that we're kind of figuring out right now how to really spread the word. And we do sometimes get emails from other communities across the US, and we're always happy to provide any information that we can because we want to share this knowledge. And, you know, we don't want other communities to kind of start with nothing and have to figure it out like the Jackson Center had to in 2009.
And we have a lot of interviews on our site from community members in the Rena neighborhood talking about how they have been fighting environmental contamination in their neighborhood and seeking environmental justice, and the way that those community members are reaching out to other communities facing similar environmental justice issues and environmental contamination issues. So I hope that, you know, just as the folks that we hear from on our website are trying to help other local communities deal with the same problems, we're hoping that our public history program and From the Rock Wall can be something where we can help other communities that are eager to document their own history and be able to allow them to benefit from what we've learned over time.
Yeah, and I just want to say that this has so many implications for the work that I do, and thinking about all the universities across the country who have Black communities in their backyard, and what Jackson Center has done to advocate for accessible housing, history, storytelling, connecting with the university. I feel like those legacies of slavery and Jim Crow are just abundant in university towns around the country. And so having this example of what community can do and what leadership looks like in that space is something that I definitely share in all the rooms that I'm in. So it's been great to see it from both sides.
All right, final call for questions. All right, well, thank you very much for your presentation, and thank you for the work you do. We will have a short break, and then our next session will start at 11:15. Thank you for joining us.
Good job, everyone.